Midweek greetings from the entire team here on DBS Television. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another edition of Viewpoint. We are broadcasting live as well on our Facebook page. And in tonight's edition, we are talking political issues in Cameroon. And we are looking at relations between administrators in our country. In tonight's edition of the program, we are having a social entrepreneur and a Pan-Africanist to talk to us. Let us discuss with you on the administrative, coherence, administrative coexistence in our country in the context of decentralization process. With me in the studio, we have Dr. Nick Nwanyam. He is a social entrepreneur. He's not a new face in Viewpoints. Good evening, Doctor, and thank you for being there.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of us, and I wish everyone the best, and hope that we would be up to the task to examine the topic.
Accompanying Doctor, we have Mr. Ngalim Derrick. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mange, and thanks for inviting.
Thank you. It's a pleasure having you, and the pleasure of our viewers as well. Let's go straight away. Take part one of the program, that is the yes and no answer session. We begin with question 1. With the power tussle among administrative authorities, is the concept of decentralization well defined in Cameroon? Doctor, I begin with you.
Well, it's not well defined, and that's why we have the problem. It's not.
It is not. Mr. Ngalim?
My answer is negative.
He says it is not well defined. We take the second question. Is there any way out to avoid such incidents among administrators, Mr. Ngalim?
Certainly there is.
There are. Doctor?
Yes, there is a way out, of course.
There are. Let us take part 2 of the program. We would have their views. If you are just joining us, this is Viewpoint here on DBS Television, a program that comes up every evening at 6:30 p.m. Cameroonians were aware of what happened in Douala. We are citing the case between the municipal administrator, that is the mayor, for Douala 1 subdivision, and the senior divisional officer for Vuri division on conflict on who should manage the affairs concerning COVID-19 pandemic, where the mayor decided to close down schools or cancel nursery schools within his municipality so that these school campuses should be disinfected. And the SDO thought that it was not his competence to do so. In tonight's edition, we are asking the question, does that infringe into the concept of decentralization? Is the concept of decentralization well defined in Cameroon? Taking from that example, Doctor, I begin with you. You say no, it is not.
Thank you very much. You just cited this example that's been going on, but I would say that to answer this question, let me break it up into 2 phases so that we don't get confused.
Yes.
In the first part, you say the SDO stops the action of the mayor. That's the first part that we're looking at. And in the second part, what was the intention of the mayor? The mayor wanted to disinfect the
school campuses. Yes.
And so let me first deal with this second part.
Mm-hmm.
The disinfection of the schools, that is something that we need to look at. When COVID-19 came, we saw, trucks, especially like in Bamenda, you saw those army rescue trucks. They went to some schools, especially Kasbambili, spraying water everywhere.
Yes.
And then we also in Douala, markets were shut down, and then they were just spraying things all over and so on. And I want to say that all of that action was non-effective. It was no use. It was just a show. All right, it was just a show, and therefore, when they were disinfecting the schools, what exactly were they doing? If they were going to disinfect the schools, what exactly were they doing, and what would be the benefit? And then other questions I might ask is, if you if he had to disinfect the school on Monday, when was he going to disinfect again or never at all? You understand what would be the frequency of the disinfection, and what exactly would he be using to disinfect? And there's so many questions. So scientifically, it's not effective, and just so that people don't get confused, this is what we would have done. He would have cleaned. You can clean the school. And it is a daily thing to clean the school. If you think that is a problem, by cleaning the school means, like we said with the COVID, droplets are deposited on tables, door handles, and so on. Put some water in La Croix. La Croix,
yes,
eau de javel,
detergent.
Eau de javel. And then you can put some soap in it. And then you put towels in it, and you wring those towels, and you wipe tabletops, benches, door handles, and then you pour some of that water, on the floor, and with the raclette, they call it in French.
Yes.
You push it away and you dry clean, which is something that should be done every day, and it's okay. You don't shut down the whole school to disinfect, and then are you getting the point?
Exactly.
Because let's suppose that you actually did whatever he calls disinfection, and the place is clean and free of viruses and other bacteria. As soon as people come in and they bring whatever in, it starts getting contaminated and so on. So he must be able to tell us how often he would do it.
Yes.
Are you getting? Otherwise,
it will be done every day.
It will
after
not
every
make
2
sense.
days. Yes.
It doesn't make sense. And then the other measures must be there, and the barrier measures and all those things. So it's a whole package. I'm just saying this so that it gets into our head, because a lot of people are making rackets out of this disinfection thing. It's a racket. You see politicians, they will start running all over, or coming up with some things just for the cameras, and just blowing things out of proportion, just so that they can suck money out of the treasury. Is it making sense so far?
Yes.
If we really want to clean, you can clean this thing and get rid of the viruses without the SDO knowing about it, and without making noise about sending children home. So I just wanted to correct that, so that when I come back to answer this other question is more of an administrative thing between the SDO and the mayor. They could be boxing any over other issues, not necessarily the class. You see, so as far as the class thing is concerned, I was just saying it without mixing my words, that what the mayor was doing doesn't even add up. Are you getting what I'm saying? But now let's look at the boxing between the SDO and let's suppose they were fighting over some other issues.
Yes.
The question is, does the SDO have the right to be punching the mayor like that? That's another thing, and that fight comes from the fact that our nation, we're a federal system. We cancelled it, and then we rubbed it off so much, and then we wiped the traces, and we went way out there to be highly centralized, so highly centralized that we put all the power in the prefect's hands and the DO's hands. And now we come up with something with the Anglophone problems and so many other problems. We are saying, let us relax a little bit so that some power should go back to the roots. And then, that power is leaking out of the hands, and people don't like it. Is it making some sense?
Those holding the power.
Yes, those holding the power, they don't really like it. And therefore, they always have a reason to keep it. They're trying to conserve that power. According to the decree, I should be the one holding on to the power, and those kind of. So that is this fight, and and you can also see that the Anglophone problem has not been solved. The violence is going on, and you remember the president has said that we've got to have reconciliation and unity. I think you've heard me saying that. Okay,
of course, yes.
And so it is because of these kind of small fights, and these fights will continue until we really go back to the drawing board and redefine the form of state and many other things, because many things are still flu. Because if I ask you, for instance, what is special status, you will not even tell me. So there are so many things that don't make sense, and we are piling administrators on top of other administrators, and they don't know where to put their foot. That is the problem. And if we had to do things properly, governors will be elected, and the SDOs or whoever occupies that function, not really the appellation, that function will also be elected and not appointed.
Okay, Doctor, we would remain with you, but we will come back. Immediately we take the views of Mr. Ngalim. Mr. Ngalim, you equally think that with the incident we are citing, the process of decentralization, the concept of decentralization was not well, or is not well defined in Cameroon?
Yep. My conviction and the part also I would say, like Doctor has already said, when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Mm-hmm. The children, I think, they're just a passive victim of the circumstance of the administrative authority and of our country, if I should say. Mm-hmm. Because the fight was not actually whether schools should continue or they should not continue. It is a confusion with the kind of system of governance that we have chosen. It is true the constitutional law of 18th January 1996 had enshrined decentralization as a fundamental principle in the organization of governance in Cameroon. But if we are still caught in this paradox of a dance, one step forward, two steps behind 24 years, getting to 25 years after, I think it's because of the lack of the goodwill to embrace what is good to fix the situation in our country. I even feel at times disturbed talking about decentralization again in our context, because our country is known for always going for that which is oblique. They don't want things that are so clear enough and glaring that they will not be able to have escape ways out. Because if you look at the three principal forms of decentralization, you will talk of deconcentration, which is a system that is strictly for a unitary, decentralized state. And that is the weakest form of decentralization, if I should say. Weak because it has so many lapses that you would always not be clear to the people or accountable as to which side you stand. There is delegation. They pick aspects from the the form of decentralization, delegation, with their regional delegates and stuff like that, or their stooges, if I could call it. And then devolution is the last one. That is the strictest form of decentralization, where powers are supposed to have been sent entirely to the municipalities to vote their mayors, let them run their affairs, build up their budget, and
execute
them, and then things run clearly, and there will be no such fight as SDO, mayor, or elected governors or appointed governors or whatever it may be. But in a perfect decentralized system, that is a devolution I'm talking about, this issue of SDOs and elected or appointed governors is supposed to be stripped off entirely. And then the mayors are given the free hands to carry out their duties without any intervention, because the interventions, I would say, they are speed bumps. They are not there to let the work that should be done get done. And that is why the tussle between the mayor here and the SDO. And the next thing I should like to say is, if we make up our minds that we want to fix things, we need to go back to foundations. You cannot come after abandoning your house for 50 years and think that we just change the top and things get functioning. That is where we are caught in all of this. I think the issue with our country and this power tussle is the fact that the benefits of the centralized system are so huge that they don't see themselves getting to lose them entirely with what we call decentralization. And that is why for 24 years they are confused between either letting the mayors who are elected run the affairs of the various regions,
municipalities,
with free hands. And that's why you get to see appointed governors, the SGOs are sent, and then the mayors are elected, and the fight is there all through. But the fight is because there is one aspect that cannot be decentralized, and that is what is killing us, and is the fiscal part of decentralization. I think that is where our pitfall is. And if you look closely at the recent tussle, not just in the littoral region, as we could say, because it has happened in Bafoussam, it has happened in Bamenda.
We had it in Fumban.
When Kmer was there, it was the same fight all through. And if you look at it, it is because there is some sort of power mongering. There is some sort of power mongering which is not helping Cameroon in any way. Anybody wants to prove I'm the tough guy. And how are you supposed to prove your toughness? By the fruits of your labor. But they spend their time fighting from year 1 to 3 and so on, but we don't get any fruits. We are going from grace to grass.
Okay, we are moving from grace to grass, Mr. Ngalim. Doctor, I remain with you still on this question about, now if we're looking at it in the light of decentralization, this incident, when you look at the communique that the SDO sent out asking the mayor to go back to his decision and schools should resume, the SDO did not talk of the importance of education. No, he was talking of the competency, who has the competency to do what. Now, the question I'm asking out here, was it, was the problem of the SDO to ascertain his power or the love of the children who would be missing classes for 1 week? Because the project of the mayor was that classes should be closed, should be interrupted for 1 week, so that the campuses should be sprayed, and is it the love for power or the love of the children who were missing classes?
That's a very difficult question to answer, because, like I said, if the cleaning of those classes were, truly part of fighting the COVID disease, I would think differently. But like I said, it's not important, because it's an unimportant act. But like you truly say, he stated in the letter that it was more of a problem of ascertaining his power.
Yes.
And when it comes to that, he's right, because body language doesn't hide. When he's looking at that, it's like, you have challenged me, let me show you that I'm the boss.
Correct.
So that's just, it was the emotions just poured out. But if he were not as emotional as that, he could still get to exert his authority without letting that other person, just, and the public, to just read up front that it's a power tussle. You get what I'm saying? But I guess he was kind of like telling him with this incident, might be there have been other incidences that he
that we were not aware of,
whether we are not aware of, and they were fighting in the background. Probably this time around he comes out with a killer punch, you better respect me, or it's going to be very nasty around here. I guess that's what happened. And then, before you take the microphone back from me,
yes,
I was going to say that Mr. Ngalim, he took time off to really, when you were talking about devolution, I was listening very keenly, because I've heard it. Mr. Lontu is one of the persons. He's tried to educate us on that, but I always get confused, and I think it's because sometimes when you don't believe in something, your mind doesn't work.
Understand it.
You just know that it's not working.
Yes.
And just to let our listeners know that when you use the word decentralization, the opposite of it is centralization. So something is either crowded to the center or is spread away from the center. That's the most simple way of understanding it. And therefore, when you are talking with the Americans or the British or the Canadians, when they are saying, yes, Cameroon should decentralize, by that word decentralize, the simple thing they are saying is spread it out. And they don't necessarily mean spread it out into 10 regions or do it the way we are doing it in Cameroon. But in Cameroon, we have given it a very restrictive term, a sense. So it is only decentralization, and federation cannot be mentioned. You get what I'm saying? And then confederation cannot be mentioned. It's only decentralization as defined by us. But technically, when you ask the American, what do you mean by decentralization, he will name confederation, he will name federation, and he will add our own kind of decentralization to mean about the same thing. He says, choose one of the three that works. But we have chosen the decentralization which is closest to centralization, and then even then, just like Mr. Ngalim was explaining, you hold a rope, you don't want to let the goat go, and it's affaire cap affaire très sérieux. So that is the problem. People are fighting over food and they don't care what goes on with the masses. That is the problem. But in reality, given our history and what has gone on and the war and everything, what you want to do is to make the lines of power very clear. And I'd always said that the best that would have happened to Cameroon would to be decentralized. I'm using the term like an American, decentralized at 2 levels. The first level, you have a big chunk of meat, you cut it first into 2 and call one West Cameroon and call the other one East Cameroon. Then you take West Cameroon and divide it now into 2 pieces. That is, so federation and then decentralization. Are you getting me? Yes. So you cause our decentralization now within the federal states. One, you divide into two, the other you divide into 8. And then so that you have peace, you don't appoint governors, you don't appoint SDOs and DOs. You get the people to elect those. Because if you go now to the regions as they are now, there is the governor, there is the
regional president of the regional assembly.
Yes, and then there's some other these things.
Yes.
Don't ask me about them. I'm the most confused person. Ask them, even they will fail the exam because they are all confused.
Actually, they are all confused, Doctor. I remain with you. We are talking about how do we move out of such a confused situation.
If we really wanted to I just gave you the answer in this. Probably I jumped the horse and I was going faster.
Yes.
If we want to solve the problem, let's do things as they are. Break the country up first into 2. Let the lines of demarcation be very clear. And then you go inside there and break the West Cameroon into 2, break East Cameroon into 8.
Yes.
And then don't appoint those people. Let the people, and then we clear up everything now so that our elections are as good as they can ever be. So that when people are elected, you are elected the governor, you are a governor chosen by the people.
The people you can account
to.
Yes.
And then when you are not doing well, the people nail you, and then now the central government can appoint a spy, I call the person a spy, to come and sit in the region and make sure that the people are not doing something that can destabilize the nation. Are you getting me?
Correct.
And he has no powers to give. He cannot give orders to the people or whatever. He has nothing to tell those elected officials. All he is he's a spy, and he can only write and whisper, say, why not those? I mean, he can whisper into the elected governor's ear.
Yes.
But he cannot tell the governor what to do. Are you getting what I'm saying? And then he can always write his report and send it up, and it's the president or the prime minister of the or whatever that can bring that governor to order.
Yes.
So that there are no power tussles. I don't know whether that's the way I see it.
Mr. Ngalim, you are of the same opinion that there are ways out of such a confused situation, like Doctor was explaining.
Yeah, definitely. Doctor has really broken down the points into very clear terms, and I would say even if Cameroon chooses to remain with decentralization, I call it decentralization because we know what it is all about. If they chose to remain with decentralization, they should pick the clearest form of decentralization, like I said, a devolution where the appointed personalities are taken completely out of.
Yes.
The municipalities are given free hands. They elect their mayors and they carry out their affairs single-handedly, and they can give an account of their operations to the central government, which is normal, but the central government will only maybe intervene in their affairs if their operations are going to be detrimental to the well-being of the state. And away from that, I call it away from that because I don't even believe that decentralization, which has failed for 24 years, is ever going to solve our problem. I will take us away from that. And like Doctor had clearly explained, I will not go into the various forms of it, but I will stand with a confederacy. Because a federation is what we had practiced, and the fruits are very bitter.
Yeah.
They're very bitter because the terms have never been respected. There is what I use often in Latin, they say sanatio in radice.
From the roots.
Yeah, you must cure from the roots.
Yes.
You cannot see the leaves of a tree drying and
you start pruning
you keep pruning and thinking that is going to solve the problem. Before the leaves begin to get dry, there is something that is happening down there that needs to be solved. And I think if the goodwill is there, we are supposed to sit together as a nation, go back to our roots and ask what went wrong, and we correct it from there, and all of us know what went wrong. A system we had agreed was going to let us live together as brothers was unilaterally tampered with, and one party was neglected. So I think if we go in for a confederacy, I heard Doctor talk someday on confederacy, and I believed his explanations with all my faith.
Yes.
I think a confederacy is what I would recommend that is going to be a solution to the Cameroon issue. And I think I love the Nicomachean ethics. says avoid the extremes.
Avoid the extremes.
Some may say one and indivisible, it's an extreme. Some may say separation, it's an extreme. But I think if we go for a confederacy that will bring peace among us, it will be the best thing that we could do for our state.
Mr. Ngalim, before we go away, for time is almost on our neck. Doctor, somebody made the suggestion that our administrators should go to school. You know, the National School of Local Administration that is in Boya Nasla, they were of the opinion that we should better send our administrators to Nasla for training so that they can be able to execute this decentralization policy. What is your opinion?
Yes.
In few minutes, just about 1-2 minutes because of time.
Yes. You are not talking of us taking our current DOs and SDOs and sending them there.
No, administrators also. Not those ones now.
No, because they are trained in an old system.
Yes.
They're like an analog system. Just leave them alone and abandon them. Take young people now, reformat them, put them in that, reformat them, and then see how to do it. Let's go to a country that are succeeding. Rwanda, Tanzania, Ghana, they don't have ENAM.
Yes.
But they have specialized schools like this. How do they do it? Copy exactly the same thing. Give them a different mindset. And then when they shouldn't write a concours where you come out and you must be employed. After that, when they leave the place, they should apply to any council and to be recruited, whether you are going to be what or to be recruited. And then if you are going to be a DO, an elected DO, you go through an election or whatever, then all this nonsense will stop. And then during the training, they should be trained on how to understand problems, how to solve problems, how to create wealth, and above all, make agriculture, industrialized agriculture, a must for anybody who is having any post of responsibility, so that the agriculture can leap forward. Okay, it's very important.
Agriculture as the backbone that can solve our situation.
Yeah, in all those communities where they'll be working. If you are not able to do it, you cannot get it. You shouldn't get the job because it will be a lie. Most of these things, if you go even to our Ministry of Agriculture, you have those directors. You can, if you like, go and check. You see those directors and all those people making noise, but none of them has a farm.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Doctor, for taking time off to be part of us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ngalim, for being there.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as well for being there. It is here that we come to the end of today's edition of Viewpoint. Tomorrow will be another day. Right after this, it is the prime time news that comes up with Cynthia Gwemo. Until we meet again, goodbye.
Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many casualties the world over. The situation is